it becomes a very tricky line to walk in helping people live today their fullest, richest lives while still preparing for tomorrow.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Blue Collar Wealth Podcast. We call it that because this is a show about real finance for real people. We often get asked, what kind of clients do you work with at Stonehouse? And the term that I like to use is blue collar wealth. Most of our clients, they have anywhere from $500,000 to many millions of dollars saved up in their retirement, but they don't really necessarily care about buying a giant yacht and sailing to the south of France. Most of our clients, they're asking us, how do I squeeze more juice out of my retirement and live a long, healthy, happy life? Well, my name is Bob Brown. I'm a certified financial planner and a founding partner here at Stonehouse Retirement Income Planners. I've had the privilege of helping many families plan and live their lives for over 20-some years now. I'm part of a growing team here at Stonehouse, and we've seen our clients go through a ton of different things in their lives. And now, thanks to the beauty of the podcast, we can share some of those stories and maybe even some shortcuts to hopefully get you on track or stay on track with your own finances. In this episode, we're going to talk to Scott Stone, and we're going to talk about how to retire comfortably by changing now. Now, you may have started to look at your own numbers, right? You might be looking at how your retirement, how your future is shaping up, and maybe some of those numbers aren't exactly looking so great. At least not to the point where you're comfortable, and that has you concerned. You know, how will things play out in reality versus what you see on a projection or on a computer screen? How much wiggle room will you have, if any? And you're not alone in this. Believe me, almost every client we work with has those same initial concerns. But by the end of this podcast, I hope you're able to get a better handle and into a better place where we can understand the importance of taking action now, how delaying those actions can actually worsen your results, and most importantly, we can give you a good place to start today. Maybe we can even find a way for you to just kind of push an easy button and let somebody else help you through that process. So, like I said, to help me discuss retiring comfortably by changing now, I brought in Scott Stone. He's one of my partners here at Stonehouse. Scott's also an advisor, and he also has a lot of experience working with people just like you, who are heading toward retirement, but not quite sure if or how it's going to play out. All right, Scott, so we're talking about how to retire comfortably, and let's just start the conversation by talking about what I know I've seen a lot in the office. I'm sure you have too. We've talked about this, where somebody comes in. This is not that uncommon, actually. Somebody comes into us and they say, hey, I want to retire now. Mm-hmm. I need to change my life. I don't, whatever. I'm frustrated where I work. Whatever the reason is, they want to do it ASAP. And we'll crunch numbers for them. We'll try to do all that we can for them. And we'll sometimes, unfortunately, show them that they're not ready. The numbers don't line up. The risk is too high for them to run out of money soon. And it's hard for us to say, green light, go ahead. But what you'll end up having happen, we'll have that person say, hey, I don't think I'll need to spend that much in 10 years. Like now I'm spending a lot compared to what I have, but in 10 years I won't need as much. Or, I'll stop traveling when I'm 72, or I'll stop eating when I'm 80. I'll live on ramen noodles or something like that. And we know that's very unrealistic, and they're setting themselves up for a future failure. They're very willing to change. I often say this, they're willing to change themselves now, but they're very eager to say, I'll be different in the future. Mm-hmm. And that almost never, ever happens. Yeah. So how do we start? How do we typically go through that and address that? Like, let's start with, why is that so problematic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think human beings, all of us, have the tendency to kick the can down the road. We want to delay our current day suffering for some point in the future, and we're desperately hoping that we hit the lottery or something in between then, and then we don't have to incur it. And I think that plays out in our everyday exchanges. It plays out in politics and how we manage our government and our budgets, and it affects how people manage their retirement, for example. So we do a lot of retirement income planning. That's Stonehouse Retirement Income Planners is branded after the fact that our primary demographic is those entering retirement and living out their retirement, and we help them do that. And so we see a lot of this kicking the can down the road kind of mentality, because it is normal human nature to do that. You don't want to cut your budget today. You're going to cut the budget in the future, and it's harder in this retirement category because most of our clients have this kind of this big nest egg. They have this pile of money. It's $200,000, it's $500,000, it's $1 million, it's $2 million, whatever it is. They've accumulated it throughout their life, and here it is sitting in an account, and they can take that money anytime they want. And it makes it very tempting to just kind of reach in there and grab a little bit more to pay for this one thing, or your furnace broke and you didn't expect that, so you need a little extra money. And so there's it's certainly our clients' money, and it's judgment free. I don't particularly care what they spend their money on. The issue is that anytime you take money out, it's no longer there to use in the future. And so there's a balancing act between providing for yourself today and providing for yourself in the future. And I think that's kind of what you're hitting on with your question. So what we see most, whether it's clients within Stonehouse or generally speaking, people in the United States and across the world, the most fragile aspect of retirement income planning, for example, is unrealistic expectation. And so it's this belief that you don't need as much money as you're going to, or as you said, I'll stop eating at age 80, or my favorite, which is, I don't plan to live that long. That kind of vibe. Their financial plan is to die by 70. So those things don't play out that way, obviously, and so. We're careful to kind of help clients navigate through the emotions of that, because it's really hard. It's hard to lower your quality of life intentionally to provide for your future and an uncertain future, because you might pass away by 70, and you will have taken that burden upon yourself at a younger age for no reason. And so it becomes a very tricky line to walk in helping people live today their fullest, richest lives while still preparing for tomorrow, because most of us will live into our 80s statistically. That being said, the ways that we try to provide for that is by creating a retirement income plan when we're talking about retirement planning. And that retirement income plan is to set the base expectations of what an account like theirs can generate over time as far as return, and how much money they can take in their monthly income based on how much money their account is likely to generate in a long-term return environment. And so you have to be very careful, because there's a lot of pitfalls here, because there's different income streams starting at different times. We might help somebody retire at age 55 from one of the school districts, and they are retiring at age 55 with a pension from the school and maybe a nest egg that they've accumulated outside of that. And then at age between 62 to 67, they're going to begin drawing Social Security. And so that's another income stream that comes into play at that time. And so, and that's a fairly guaranteed income stream. We're expecting it to be there. Hopefully it will be. And so when you're planning for them, you have to combine the fact that they have future income streams coming in and future liabilities. Some of their contracts might have their health insurance, which might be paid by the school up until their age 65, and then they go on Medicare, and then the school district stops paying for it. Well, in that case, at age 65, they're going to have a lot of Medicare decisions to make, because base Medicare, Part A, is free, but then there's an extra premium for Part B, Part C, Part D. And then above that, there's co-pays and medication costs. And so medical care and insurance becomes a huge expense as we get older. And so if you don't plan for that and cover for those additional expenses age 65 and up, then you could be setting them up for failure with false expectations. We sit down and we go through what we call a future you retirement income plan. And that's where you kind of look at your future self and what that future looks like. Am I traveling? Have I paid off all my debts? Are my kids all out of the house, or are they still financially dependent upon me? Am I trying to move to a different geography? Do I want to move to Florida and I need to buy a new home down there, and home prices are more expensive, and quality of life is more expensive, cost of living. So we sit down and kind of map that entire thing out in specialized software, and it helps us determine a success ratio, essentially. How likely are you to live out your retirement based on these projections and not run out of money? And so we can give them essentially a percentage score. You're 80% likely, you're 90% likely, and there are no guarantees in this life, but we like to see that number be above 90% when we're creating these numbers, as close to 100% as possible, so that we feel confident that they understand I need to take on a certain amount of risk in the stock market in order to generate return, and I can't take on too much risk to try to get an insane amount of wealth because I could lose it all. So I need a managed amount of risk to generate a managed amount of return to help me achieve the distributions I need every month to support my lifestyle.
Can I stop you on that one?
Please, yeah.
So I think that's really important. I think a lot of people have this, I want to say false expectation, but they view a financial advisor as the guy or girl who's going to pick my investments, and that's where it stops,
yeah.
Right? And that is where it stops for some people in our industry. Mm-hmm. Those are typically called brokers or just money managers, whatever they want to call. But a true financial planning firm, the process, I should say, is really much more in depth than that. It's all those things you're talking about. So when someone comes to us, we're not guaranteeing them anything, as you said. We're showing them the probability. Mm-hmm. And what I think is really interesting about doing the future you, right, that you just talked about. So when we work with somebody, we take their information, we put that into the system, we play around with the numbers to show them here's where it stands today. And here's what I call are like lever points. Like if you retire 3 years later, here's how it changes your probability, your likelihood of success, all that stuff. But I think it's also super important to understand that in most cases we're managing money for people. But another big part of our job is to bring solutions when their numbers get off track. Mm-hmm. So in 2008, you were with me in the trenches, right? In 2008, the market had an absolutely horrific year. It was one of the worst ever. And when you sit down with somebody in 2007 and do a plan, mm-hmm. and then a year later, should you revisit that? You might want to. Yeah. That's a dramatic event. It wasn't a 1 month down. Right. It was a substantial drop in the market. It changed the plan. It didn't ruin it. It changed it. And it's worth revisiting, right? So when you bring somebody in there, you don't just go, oh, wow, bad luck, man. Yeah. Right? You say, hey, we didn't expect this, but here are some things we can do. Mm-hmm. And there's a good number of clients that I know that because we openly talked about stuff during some difficult times, right? They had an open mind to listen and then actually act and say, and I'm sure it was tough. You get in the car, you drive home and say, I don't want to really do those things, but I think, they brought up some good things and we want to deal with that. Yeah. And then they come back and say, hey, we're going to do what you said. Yeah. And those people are in much, much better shape today because they made those changes today instead of their future 10 years from now. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do it today, but in the future.
Kind of takes them out of the driver's seat if they wait until later. So if you don't make the adjustments now, you don't get an option in the future. It's going to be made, that choice is going to be made for you. So there's a lot of events like market events. So in that 2008, 2009 financial crisis, that was what the industry kind of calls a black swan event. So it's not something you can plan for because it's something that comes around once a generation. And there's no real warning or certainty that it's going to even happen. We might never ever see that again, or it could happen next year. COVID is another example of that. Everyone knew a global pandemic would happen one day, but we've been waiting almost 100 years for it to happen, and it hasn't.
Why do all these things keep happening in our generation?
Yeah, right. Yeah, things are speeding up. So we have all these kind of black swan events that you can't put in a financial plan because you can't you can't plan for Martians invading. I mean, could it happen? I guess technically we could be invaded at one time by space invaders, but you can't plan for that. So there's a lot of things that are, kind of globally happening that can have an impact on your portfolio that you can't build into plan, but you have to adjust if they do happen. But there's also, on the more micro scale, life issues, death of a spouse, cancer diagnosis, loss of part-time job, maybe a child that lost their job and now they've moved back in with you, and now you have to make some adjustments to your budget because of that. And so there's a variety of things that can happen in a person's life, divorce, that really change dramatically the financial atmosphere of that client's life, and you have to then make adjustments around that. So just because you created a plan and it said you have a 95% chance of success when they were 55, their life at age 60 could look nothing like it did at age 55. And so you have to keep maintaining that and updating the parameters that you're basing that plan off of, so that it remains consistent with their current life and their current set of goals.
Yeah, that's what flexibility.
Yeah,
the F word.
The Fs. Yeah,
I was going to say the F word.
The big F words of finance.
Flexibility is king, and like a lot of what we do with folks is when they come, something happens in their life to the point where they say, "Wow, this changes. I need to talk." Sit down and talk. Yeah. And what's nice, if we've done the future you, if we've done the plan, they're a client, to simply come in, sit down, rearrange the data so it's current and it represents what's just happened in their life, and now look at the numbers. And if we have to adjust, we adjust. And we're pretty good at coming up with solutions. We can't solve everything, but we can at least manage the situation and help them navigate through it.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
This has been great.
Yeah, thanks for having me and asking the question.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. So there you have it, everybody. So we talked about how to retire comfortably and make the changes you need to make. So we learned some things, hopefully. I learned that my partner, Scott, believes there are aliens and they will invade someday.
They are out there. But, I don't know if they'll ever come here, but
but we hope that you learned something. Let's put it this way. If you still have questions or you want to know how to proceed and look at your own numbers, we can do that for you at Stonehouse. Anywhere you go should be able to do it. We call it our future you analysis here. It's great for folks to first let us sit down with you, put your numbers in, and see what the picture looks like. And if you want to change your picture, change your future, we can show you ideas of how to do that and when to do that. So hope that was helpful, and we'll see you on the next one.